Meeting of the Measure Z Advisory Committee. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At the request of staff, we are going to do a modification to the agenda. I understand that there are some members present who would like to speak in behalf of an application, and in respect for those people's time and so on, we're going to be adding an item D2A, which will be a public comment for those wishing to advocate on behalf of a particular application. So is there approval of the committee to modify the agenda as I've indicated?
Chair Zemer, sorry to interject. This is not a modification to the agenda. You'll be doing public comment on this agenda anyway, but just as far as when to do the public comment on item D3, and that is the applications. Just because folks need to get back to work, we don't want people in the audience wondering when they can get up and speak on behalf of their application. So before we go into funding projections, if we could just open it up for public comment.
Okay.
So
just for clarity then, we will have two public comment opportunities. The first will be the normal public comment for items not on the agenda, and then a secondary public comment period for those individuals who want to advocate for a particular application. You voted yes? Seeing no rebellion, we'll move forward in that direction. Next item would be the discussion items, the approval of the 1/23/2020 action summary. Are there any requests to modify or change the action summary as presented? We have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion and a second to approve the action summary as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. County Administrative Office updates.
yes, thank you. A couple of housekeeping items. Just a reminder that use of cell phones during this meeting is discouraged and places your personal devices at risk of public records requests. And so this is a public meeting that is televised, and if you're on your phone, folks might wonder what you're up to. Also, the Measure Z audit, an update on that, that's well underway. The independent auditor has received the majority of the information from outside agencies and is pending receipt of the county's supporting documentation, which was requested about a month ago. The auditor controller has that information, and it will likely be a couple of months before we have that final review. Also, as you address the public comment on the applications, we'll be doing that prior to the review of funding projections.
Okay, thank you. This would be the time for public comment on any item not on the agenda. So if anybody would like to make a comment on an item not on the agenda, would you come to the podium, please? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Ms. Wilson, did you want to do the comments before your update? Did I understand you correctly? The advocates for particulars you want to do before any of your updates?
Well, I just provided you with the CAO updates. The public comment on non-agenda items.
No, we've already done that. I'm talking about the advocates for particular applications. It was unclear to me whether you wanted them before or after your update.
Well, I've given the update, so it will be after the update.
All right.
We should move into that now.
Excuse the confusion of the chair at this point. We'll try to move forward. Is any individual here who would like to speak as an advocate, or I suppose you could be a detractor or to any particular application? We'd ask you to come to the podium and share your views with us.
Turn off my phone. I haven't done this before. My name's Dottie Russell, and hi. And I wanted to talk to you about an application for the Measure Z. So is that a different time to talk about it or no? Okay. Sure. Sorry. I know a lot of people are applying for this money, so I just wanted to say a little bit about some of the things that we've been doing in Southern Humboldt. So in Southern Humboldt, there's a couple of churches that were able to use the old Episcopal Church, the Christian Science Church is using now. And that's because some people broke into the Christian Science Church in the beginning of 2019 and burned it down. And so that's a work in process. And then we have the Christian Science Reading Room, and that's in Garberville. So we have a location in Redway and a location in Garberville. And in October of last year, 2019, there was a man that froze to death. And there's quite a homeless problem down there with a lot of problems and a lot of unhappiness and illness. In November, there was a homeless man that had cancer, and he had stage 4 cancer. He was brought up here, and he didn't want to do chemotherapy at St. Joe's, so they released him and sent him to the shelter up here, the Mission. They said he was too sick, so they released him and sent him back by ambulance to St. Joe's. When he got to St. Joe's, they released him again. He didn't know where to go. He went to Southern Humboldt, and one thing led to another, and he didn't get care, and he didn't have any food. And we tried to help him get a voucher, because they have vouchers sometimes for 6 weeks. And unfortunately, we asked the sheriff if they would please not tag his car again, because he was sleeping in his car. A couple family members and staff decided that they'd, okay. So anyway, he passed away without food on the floor of a motel that a family member had given him because he didn't have any help. And a number of us had been trying to take food to him and help clean him up and go to the food bank and stuff. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. And people don't deserve to die down there, and there's not resources. So our project is to have a little bit of a resource in Redway and a little bit of a resource in Garberville as well. And it would have 2 meals in Garberville and 2 meals in Redway, giving us a chance. Because if they eat together and prepare food together, they really start bonding and feeling like they have a support. We also opened an emergency weather shelter after the second person passed away in November.
I know.
So
Could-
we opened.
Could you kind of summarize? We're trying to be
Sure. Sorry, it's a
respectful
long
with
story.
the
Yeah,
time.
right. So anyway, we just need a lot of help down there, and for not a whole lot of money, it would mean having somebody, 4 volunteers working part-time to provide some resources and keep these people alive. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Shelter, the People of New Directions. Thank you very much for entertaining our application. I wanted to talk a little bit because we are a new kind of entity. We are the only business that actually should be a nonprofit that actually works with the homeless population and provides employment readiness for these individuals as we go in to clean up camps. Where we have a lot of other groups that clean up the outsides of these areas and our roadsides and our parks, we go deeper and we work with the homeless population to clean our streams and our creeks. To this date, we're just a little bit under 12,000 syringes that we've pulled out, and we're approaching 466 tons of trash that we've pulled out of our wetlands and stuff. We've done this all with the homeless population. This is the first attempt of us trying to get a little bit extra resources, as we are self-supported and we provide all our own safety equipment and stuff. And if I had a little bit of resources to help us with the safety equipment, we can actually get deeper into the woods and be safer at doing it. These individuals that come from the homeless population go through a training process, and then they go through the Cal OSHA airborne and bloodborne diseases, which we pick up the cost on. But it's really imperative in the areas that we work that we keep their bodies that have already experienced a lot of real damage out there as they were homeless. And now we're trying to get them back into our lifestyle. So I just wanted to share a little bit as you read our application. We are kind of a new entity, and people keep telling me we should be a nonprofit, but we get a lot more done by being a business. And that business is working with the other nonprofits and law enforcement by all means to kind of work and nullify the issues. So I thank you very much for entertaining this, and I'll be sitting at every one of these meetings. If you have any questions when you get to my application, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Anyone like to speak on behalf of any of the applications?
Good afternoon. Thank you again for all the hours of work you put into this. I'm Tammy Trent from the city of Fortuna. I would like to let Commissioner Zemer know that last year when you had the question on the $25,000 that you thought we added extra to pay down our PERS, I do have a letter from our finance manager telling you that the only thing we asked for what was mandated, which we actually did pay a little bit extra, so you might notice that our application this year is for a little bit less, is because we have to pay or we get to pay less in PERS this year. So that's gone down a little bit. We also are asking this year for a canine. Our canine, police canine was medically retired last year. And so I see that you have a lot of requests and not enough money, so I'm gonna take out all of the funding that's continuous and ask for just the one-time funding on that, which would be the dog purchase and the training and the canine's vest and kennel supplies, which comes to around $41,000. So I'd like to reduce that one. And thank you very much for your consideration.
Just one quick question while you're here. I noticed in reviewing the application that you had broken the normal cost of the PERS out and showed the normal cost as one element and then the balance as a second element. I presume in reference to our conversation and so on last year. I assume the combination of those two items is the actual projected actuarial determination for your agency for that period of time. So say it's about 41% or 42% when you add them in aggregate, is that correct?
I'm not sure, I didn't look, but I know what they put in, what they asked for is what is mandated that we pay.
Okay.
And I do have, if you want, I do have the letter from our finance manager that explains, if you wanted to.
Perhaps if you'd leave it with the staff and then she can circulate it to all the committee members as clarification, that would be helpful.
Okay, and if you do have any more questions, hopefully I have all your answers this year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Would you just repeat for our notes what you are requesting, again, how you're reducing your application?
On the K-9, I'm reducing all of the continuing payments and just asking for the dog purchase, the training, and the supplies, the K-9, the
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ames,
please ask the applicants to identify
which number?
with number and the name or something
Okay,
like
certainly.
that.
Yes. Just for clarity purposes, if you could identify the item number and the name of the project, that would just be clarity for the record.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jeanette Hurst, and it's number 1 for 211 Humboldt. 211 Humboldt is a resource and information center here in Humboldt County. It's been around for almost 50 years now. We are 24/7, 365 days a year, and we cover the calls for people on a daily basis for resources ranging from car seats to medication. Just depends. We get anywhere from 60 to 140 calls a day. We also run multiple programs through our program, Postpartum Support Network for women, every Monday for the last year and a half. We do an emergency food pantry, which is in the evening and on weekends, which I take call for those because none of the other food pantries are open during those hours. And we do a VITA program. We do all the coordinated entry for all the homeless people. And we are currently working with United Way Worldwide and the CDC to get a program up and running for the coronavirus right now. We were working initially with them on the flu, but since this has happened, we've kind of switched our calls up a little bit on that. We're working with FEMA right now, at least United Way International and 211 National is working with FEMA in order to get more training done for the offices of emergency services and other entities that cover putting information out to and answering information from the community members. During the last PSPS, we had a little over 600 calls. During the very short one that was only a few hours long, we had about 200, so that tells us that our call volume is going to go very, very high. And because we only have one staff person that is on pay to answer these calls, we have to do it through volunteers, or we have to send our calls to other entities, 211s in California, and if need be, go out into the United States, into other states, and they will pick up our calls. Our database goes there, so they all have the same information as we do. We have a live Google Doc that we upgrade as things are changing, and they can all see that when resources are when shelters being coming up, when food's being distributed, or water, or anything like that. I'm also the chair of Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster, now Community Organizations Active in Disaster, for the last 10 years, and that is allowing us to pull in those people during the last outage to get people to charging centers or to food banks or to get them oxygen this Christmas. Due to, I don't know what's going on. I've been working with our mental health only because we're getting a lot of suicide calls now. So we're dealing with that situation over the holidays between New Year's and Christmas. We had 6 in one day, and we couldn't reach anybody here. We cannot hang up on the calls because we're all certified, air certified, so we have to call a national center and get those calls transferred to a live person at that point in time. People are hearing about 211. They're using us. It's a simple 3-digit number. Nobody else in the United States is going to be able to do this because everybody else is going to be either 7 to 10 digits for them to call in, and most people during stress of time can't remember that many numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Eberhardt. I'm a lieutenant. Sorry. Better?
Thank you.
My name is Matt Eberhardt. I'm a lieutenant with the Fortuna Police Department with the City of Fortuna. First, I'd like to extend Chief Downey's apologies. He's unfortunately had a conflict today, but I do anticipate him coming to future meetings and making it. I'd also like to echo Tammy Trent's comments that we are very grateful for the Measure Z funds that have been provided. We're with public safety. We feel that that fits into the mission of Measure Z. We have the Humboldt County Drug Task Force Officer as one of our requests as number 8 on the agenda. And we are requesting that again. That's been a very successful position. Each one of our positions directly impacts the county. Yes, we are with the City of Fortuna, but each one does impact the county and is available and assist in the county areas as well as within the City of Fortuna. The Drug Task Force Officer, we just recently contacted them, and we're doing an evaluation of our employee. We got, really good feedback, very positive feedback. As you can see in any of the media out there, there is large methamphetamine seizures, large heroin seizures. There's definitely narcotics within our county. Our agency being able to be a part of that and help impact that is very critical. And we do appreciate that, and we are requesting to continue that. On item number 9, this year, and additionally, as Councilmember Trent spoke to, we are requesting to reinstate our K-9 program. With our K-9 program, we are, in the past, our K-9 has been patrol trained. We are requesting a dual trained K-9 to where it'll be able to handle patrol regarding building searches, officer safety, suspect apprehension, things of those nature, in addition to narcotics detection. Like as I previously said, there is a lot of narcotics in our area, and we feel that that would be a huge asset. We don't say no when we're requested. Our agency, when we had our K-9 active, was all throughout the county helping. And the last item before I run out of time here is item number 10, our school resource officer. We've been fortunate enough to have that position. Our school resource officer works throughout the county in the Eel Valley area. Just this week, she was reporting to me that she was at Cuddyback, and then she went to Lolita. And so she is continuing to check in with the county schools. And additionally, she helped drastically. In the last few months, we had a situation where we had active threat to our students at the school, and we took a couple students into custody. And having that resource there to keep our youth safe and to investigate that crime is crucial. And that school is a hub for children in the county. And thank you for your consideration on these.
Thank you for your time. Let me just give you a little heads up, perhaps you and your other staff member. This discussion came up last year, and it's something I'm just trying to clarify, basically. And there's been quite a bit of community comment and public notice about, especially from the Fortuna officers, that their wage scale and so on is below comparable areas, and they were seeking essentially parity and so on. In looking at the applications from the three agencies that are requesting police positions, both Arcata and Eureka show their fully burdened cost to be right around $110,000 per officer. Your application shows $159,900. Can you talk amongst yourselves with your staff person and help me understand if in fact your salaries and so on are lower, as is the claim in the public, why the fully burdened cost of your application is almost 50% higher? And I'm not asking you to do it right now. I'm just saying later in the day sometime I'd like to try to clarify this so the whole committee can have an understanding of that circumstance.
Yes, it certainly can.
Thank you.
And if I may just make a point of order, just to ensure that everyone in the public has an equitable amount of public comment time, we really do need to adhere to the clock. And so if members of the public and chair, if you could help keep folks focused, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Within reason, we will do that. But with the limited number of people seeking to speak today, I appreciate your point, and I think it's well taken. But I think letting people, as long as they're being germane and to the point, I think as chair, I'm going to allow reasonable flexibility and so on, as long as it doesn't get away from us, which I don't believe it has so far.
If I could add, the last speaker was speaking on 3 different applications.
Yeah.
I think we should have some flexibility.
Yeah. We'll try to be respectful of the time frame, but we'll also be reasonably flexible. So, sir, sorry to preface your comments that way.
Apologize to me. Good afternoon, Chair. I just want to take a short opportunity to reintroduce myself to the committee. I'm Captain Brian Stevens, the Eureka Police Department, and I'll be the primary point of contact for the Measure Z application for the 2020-2021 Measure Z year. I just wanted to make a quick note that our application this year, overall cost is coming in under what we applied for last year for our 2 positions within our department, the missed officer and the park ranger, along with our uplift program. We have not increased our salary request for our 2 internal positions. And as any program goes, with the success of that program, we can see where we can further utilize the members that we have and benefit the program and continue to find ways to help the members of our community. So some of our cost increase are coming through slightly new programs, like a diversion program that we're going to add to further try to get people from the court system into the uplift program so they can meet those milestones and better themselves in the community, as well as just needing the personnel to run that type of program. Our homeless outreach workers, we're going to try to move one to a full-time position and then hire another second part-time position. The relationship they have, given their background and their training with the community members they're trying to help, and their availability just to get people to and from appointments and ensure things are being taken care of, it has been vital to the success of especially the uplift program. So that's a short, brief overview of our application this year. I know you guys, I assume you just got them, given the comments and given what the agenda said. So I'll make myself available to any questions at any time. Please reach out to me, and look forward to working with you this year on the Measure Z committee. And thank you for your consideration.
Just one quick question in pursuit of the line that I was pursuing. The $110,000 that you're requesting in Measure Z, does that in fact represent the total cost to employ that individual, or are you only requesting a portion of the actual totally burdened cost for that individual in the application?
Knowing that question might come, I can tell you that the amount that we requested includes their salary, their specialty pay, life insurance, their PERS contribution, their health insurance, medical, workers' comp, and their dental and vision.
Okay, so it is a full position.
It is. We don't ask for any training costs. We don't ask for uniforms, equipment. The department itself burdens those costs, and we take care of that on our.
So it's the net personnel cost in kind of a pure sense then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Tammy Trent again. Just in answer to your question, in the packets that we sent on page 3, on both of those packages, a full breakdown of all the expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Still doesn't address the disparity.
Anyone else would like to speak on behalf of any of the applications?
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman, committee members, and staff. My name is Walt Wilson, resident of Fortuna. I am here today to speak on behalf of the funding applications filed on behalf of the City of Fortuna. Those are numbers 8, 9, and 10. I will first voice my support of the comments presented by Fortuna Mayor Pro Tem Tammy Trent and Fortuna Police Lieutenant Matt Eberhart. They speak more eloquently than I. And I would also like to thank the advisory committee for providing past funding for 2 Fortuna police officers, our drug task force officer and our school resource officer, which are 2 vital positions. Our drug task force officer is assigned to the Humboldt County Task Force, Drug Task Force, operationally run under the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office. The task force serves all of Humboldt County. The Drug Task Force accomplished the following during calendar year 2019. They seized 51.83 pounds of methamphetamine with an estimated street value of $939,160. They seized 37.46 pounds of heroin with an estimated street value of $1,018,163. They seized 285.2 grams, that's 10 pounds, of cocaine with an estimated street value of $28,520. They seized illegally possessed firearms, 42 illegally possessed firearms, various amounts of illegally possessed prescription drugs, and other illegally possessed narcotics. We owe the task force officers and Sheriff Billy Hansel a big thank you for this amazing job. Our school resource officer, Lindsay Frank, is a very busy officer indeed. She maintains an office at Fortuna High School, and her working territory includes the entire Eel River Valley. Officer Frank oversees approximately 4,000 students and does an outstanding job. To wrap this up, I will ask that you consider providing ongoing funding for our 2 police officers, and if funding is available, support for a K-9 officer. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Amber Bolts, and I'm here representing Southern Trinity Area Rescue. This first meeting I've been to, so bear with me. So I see that my boss has asked for a 3rd paid EMT position. I can't stress enough how critical that is. I'm one of the paid weekend EMTs, and we've now lost 3 people in the last month, either due to retirement, medical.
This,
yes,
number 26, Rick.
27 or 26, yes, sorry. We've lost 3 people in the last month, volunteers in the last month, EMTs. So we are down to no one during the weekdays. It's become quite a struggle. I know that city ambulance, we've had to ask them to now come cover us during the weekdays sometimes because we just don't have anyone anymore. They are putting through people through a EMT program as we speak, trying to recruit more people, but it's pretty much impossible to get anyone out there. And majority of our calls, I know that at least that I run, are probably 75% of them in the Humboldt County district, just because we're so close to that, county line. And we've had a huge increase amount of DUI accidents and over the bank stuff that's just been no fire department available out there. We don't get, it's basically me and my partner, and we handle the whole situation 9 out of 10 times because we have nobody else to come help us. We call for backup and we just don't get it. So, I mean, I feel it's crucial that we do get extra, paid positions so we can keep the ambulance staffed out there. I mean, it's bad enough we're already so far out and so far from a hospital and not having that ambulance and waiting for Fortuna to show up because Trinity County has basically already said they will not take on that task. They will not come over. So it's basically on, city ambulance to do it, and waiting for them to go all the way to Ruth, 3 hours if you're in critical condition is, pretty scary. It's scary enough when people are an hour away from us, So, yeah, I just can't, express enough how grateful we are from what we are getting from you guys and how much we really need this. So, and if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them to the best I can. So, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Measure Z Committee. I'm Mike Johnson with the City of Fortuna. I realize that we've had a number of people address these items, so while our funding items are 8, 9, and 10, I will primarily address 8 and 10 as they are a regionally effective position. As you've noticed in the items in the newspaper, the interdiction efforts in Fortuna have been effective. The seizures that have taken place down there are not just small 1 ounce or less, but are many ounces or pounds. I'd also like to have you recognize that while those things are taking place there, the officer does not primarily serve in Fortuna, but is serving in Humboldt County at large. So their efforts are not just in Fortuna, but at the county at large. I'd also like to address item 10, the school resource officer. This position serves as a liaison. The officer serves as a liaison between the school and the student, as well as the school and the student and the community. You may have also noticed that there have been some incidents at the school locally, and this person is a trusted confidant and was able to intercede in a situation that could have turned out very badly. But in their time serving, they have gained the confidence of the student body, and they are able to serve as a safe confidant and someone to speak with, even more so sometimes than school staff. So thank you for funding those positions, and I would like to advocate that that would continue if possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Measure Z Committee. My name is Chris Cooper. I'm the Assistant Director of the Humboldt County Library, and we're looking at number 19, the 2 security guards. Safety is really of paramount importance in our mission to serve the Humboldt County Library community, and we want to create a welcoming, safe environment for all our guests. We have approximately 150,000 visits to the library every year, and some of the issues that we have at the county library Eureka location come in the form of drug use, aggressive behavior, and theft. In January of this year, we had a staff member assaulted by one of our guests, and Also, there was a break-in in our parking lot with one of our employees' car where they smashed the window and took her belongings. And that being said, library leadership is working really very collaboratively and proactively with Eureka PD, DHHS, helping Humboldt and City of Eureka staff and other community stakeholders to make the library a safe place for all. One example of this collaborative effort is the revitalization of Clara Mayberry Park, and it's the way the agencies got together, worked toward a common goal, and it made the library a more welcoming destination. The facility is about 65,000 square feet. We have 94 parking spaces, so there's a lot of ground to cover. Measure Z funding would help provide 2 security guards for the Eureka location, and they would provide a deterrent and really efficient mitigation of threats. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak as an advocate for any particular application? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. This will be D3, distribution of the applications and discussion from the staff.
So included in your packet are the hard copies of the applications we've received. I want to thank everyone who came in to pick the applications up last week. I hope the rest of you were able to go online and review them. They've been available, as are the letters of support. Those are a separate attachment in your packet. There is an Excel worksheet to help you do your homework. It looks like this, but it's black and white. So it has the name of the agency, a brief description, and the amount requested. And you can use this while you are reviewing applications for your notes, or as you know, we will begin with a yes/no vote. This would be a great tool for you to use while you review these applications and would help move things along. As far as the funding projections, those are also included in your packet. And looks like this over here. And in this fiscal year 1920, 10.9 million was budgeted for Measure Z revenues. We are anticipating that revenues will come in slightly higher at 11.05 million. This additional revenue, along with some savings from the Department of Health and Human Services, allowed the board to allocate $205,528 at mid-year to roads, and that was in accordance with your committee's secondary recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. Moving forward, since Measure Z is highly influenced by local industries, in particular the local cannabis industry, and cultivators will be resuming tax payments after a 1-year reprieve, we estimate for fiscal year 2021 revenues of 10.9 million. Our ongoing staff costs equal 7.8 million, leaving $3,105,341 available for your committee to allocate. So we're in a better place than we were last year as far as number of applications and the amount available.
You want to ask about the sheriff?
Questions of the committee members?
No, I have a question. Excuse me.
Hi, I was remiss in not paying attention when we were back to the step before. I was in touch with the Southern Trinity Volunteer Fire Department, and they have an application to pay for their workers' comp, but they really, really wanted to be here today, but this was their quarterly board meeting, and they just couldn't be here. And they send their apologies, but they will be here for the rest of the meetings. I just wanted to mention that.
Mr. Ames?
I didn't, on the page you were just discussing, I didn't see the sheriff's department down here. I'm sorry, the fire department.
The fire department does not have ongoing staff costs that are funded by Measure Z.
Not at all?
This sheet only lists
I know what the sheet is.
proposed revenue. It lists the
Right.
proposed expenditures for the in-house county departments, but it doesn't address any of the outside applicants, which the fire departments would be.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple. I'm going to reference two documents that you have supplied us. The first is the summary calculation sheet that was provided in reference to our discussion about our concerns about the increasing incremental costs of the personnel. And then the second one is obviously the sheets you provided today. In comparing those two, it looks to me that the county's requests for the current fiscal year will be $1,117,000 above what you projected or actually adopted in 1920. And I can break it down department by department. Some of them seem to be just inflationary, but some of them seem like they are beyond inflationary. So I have a couple questions just for reference purposes. The public defender was 205 last year. They're requesting 237 this year for a gain of 32. DHHS was 626 last year. They're requesting 745 or a gain of 119,000. District attorney was $1,194 this year. They're requesting $1,341 for an increase of 147,000. 587 this year, and the sheriff was 4.21 million last year and is 4.977 million this year for an increase of 766,000. I presume some of that is a result of the ebb and flow of personnel that we've been talking about as far as recruitment and so on, but can you just talk a little bit about which of these are inflationary and which of them are a result of different numbers of positions and other factors?
I would first point out that the sheriff does contain safety employees who come at a much higher rate as far as CalPERS expenses associated, as well as they received some differential pay adjustments in the last MOU cycle that particularly impacts their agency. We also noticed that we were finding as the years went on, particularly with some of the public safety departments such as probation, their salaries were consuming all of their allocations and they weren't having any funding left for the maintenance of those employees. And so what we did this year was determine how many staff were associated to each particular department and provided $5,000 per staff member across the board for those additional expenses associated to maintaining that staff, such as training, computers, office supplies, things of those sorts. So that sort of shored up all of the departments so that they were receiving an equitable share to support their staff, and one particular department wasn't receiving more benefit than another.
Okay. I always seem to be picking on the sheriff.
You're not picking on me.
But
He can take it.
That's right.
like I said, looking at the 766, I have to believe that that's just at least significantly influenced by the ebb and flow of positions rather than the items you've just identified. Could you speak to that a little, Sheriff?
Just want to, I'll speak to that question, but I don't have any control over my budget, so.
I set those numbers for him.
That's right. So Alicia did set those numbers for us, and there's really is no. I have allocated my positions. They're the same positions as last year, and so we did not lose any positions. I mean, the one thing is that's going to be different is this year, since I didn't fill about 5 of the positions because of our staffing, some of that money is going back into the committee or the board to consider after this. After this next year. So the first quarter budget for the next year, the county will have additional revenue to spend based on my inability to fill positions.
Okay. So just so I'm clear.
We could provide a line-by-line analysis.
I'm just trying to generally understand. So what I heard the sheriff say is the allocated positions in both timeframes are the same.
Correct.
40 or 38 or whatever it happens to be. So the 766,000 increase is in fact the inflationary effect of all of the inputs just over 2021 versus 1920. Is that correct?
That is correct. We took his salary projections for what the staffing that he currently holds
Okay.
and added on $5,000 per employee for additional overhead.
Okay. So then in general aggregate numbers, if you use those same reference sheets, it looks like the county share is up about 14% this year compared to last year. Is that correct?
Sure. You have it right there in front of you. I'm not that much of a math whiz, so I cannot confirm nor deny.
I'm just comparing 1,117,000 against 6,777,000 and saying it's essentially a seventh, you know. So, okay.
Sounds like you've done the math.
Thank you.
And this, I'll just tell you too, this actually translates to my current budget right now and the budget projections. I have increased costs this year. And so they've done a recalculation with the services and those kind of things that the county support for each employee. And so my per employee costs have gone up. And so it does affect my budget to the tune of, you know,
$750,000.
About, yeah, several $100,000.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or corrections or information requests regarding the financial situation?
I have two questions. One, I don't know if this is for Sheriff or Alicia, but you said the unspent or unallocated positions, those funds would be returned to the board through the committee. When would that trigger be that we could, and the real question is, can we use that anticipated amount for this allocation?
I think Alicia probably can answer that, but how it calculates in the budget year is they don't really realize that full number until after this budget year is complete.
Right.
And so at that point in time, they'll do a sweep of our account. Whatever money is left in there, it'll go back into the Measure Z fund for the board to distribute after that first quarter, which is about October.
So similar to what we did with road, or what the board did with roads this year?
Yes.
Understood.
Right. That's why I think it's important as we talk about the lineup, you know, what we talked about before is prioritize those things, and then whoever doesn't get funded, you know, that next person, it'd be our recommendation to put that money towards that project.
Right.
Yeah.
The second question was, are we going to get the 10-year projection that was discussed in previous meetings?
The working committee, the working group designated by the board has gotten together and they have come up with some recommendations. Those recommendations will be presented to the board likely on April 16th, or 14th. I keep having the 16th in my head. April 14th, that's a Tuesday. And so we will present those to the board along with your committee's recommendations. And I would encourage that your committee, as well as the public, participate in that meeting. It'll be a departmental item up for discussion.
Any other comments, concerns, information requests regarding the fiscal elements? Any public comment on this aspect? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move forward then. Did you want to go through a summary? You had to review our further process and so on. I assume you had some input you'd like to forward on that?
Yes, just a reminder of next steps for your committee. So similar to last year, first what your committee will do will be voting yes or no, indicating your evaluation on the application's intent, whether it meets the Measure Z/O ballot language. Following voting, you all will return on the March 12th meeting for the ranking of applications from 1 to 3. 1 will indicate your highest priority and 3 being the lowest. Following that ranking, staff will return at the March 19th meeting with applications sorted by highest rank to begin assigning funding recommendations. At the meeting in January, your committee decided not to reduce applications unless the merit of particular funding components called for a reduction. At the meetings of March 19th and 26th, your committee will finalize those recommendations for submittal to the CAO. We anticipate presenting your recommendations to the board, as Alicia said, on April 14th. Additionally, the Measure Z forecast and results of the working group's efforts will be presented at that time. Again, we encourage all of you to attend that meeting. And the outcome from that meeting will be incorporated into the proposed budget that will be presented on June 2nd. Public hearings will take place on June 15th. This is the final opportunity for the board to make any adjustments to the proposed budget. And again, the participation of your committee and the public is highly encouraged. Budget adoption will take place on June 23rd. And beginning in July, we will begin executing Measure Z contracts with the awarded agencies.
Questions of the committee? Any public comment or questions or concerns about process?
I just wanted to go on record that unfortunately I will not be in attendance next week due to a commitment outside of the area.
Mr. Chair, I want to share some thoughts I have about the ranking priority process.
Okay.
So the voting members will be ranking, and after it's determined, if it meets the intent, yes or no, voting members will be providing a ranking order, 1, 2, or 3. And for the chairman and for the rest of the committee's consideration, I want to put this idea out to have some justification to the priority numbers that are assigned per member. So I'll just kind of share the concept. We can't have more, to me, you can't have more priority ones than funding exists. And so for each member, what I would ask is that the total number ones that you assign to each application not exceed $3.1 million. And then of those applications that individual members would rank number 2, that should be, I would recommend a number that's less than 3.1 million. And what I would recommend is $600,000. And that's approximately the amount of money that was in excess of last year because of increased revenue projections and the inability of the Sheriff's Department to fill vacant positions. That number, of course, could be increased or made less. And then number 3 is basically everything else. So I'm just curious to know what the rest of the committee members think about that, and as an attempt to bring some, my comment here and suggestion here is to bring some order to the priority order. Thank you.
Okay. Just let me make sure that I understand your concept. So what you're saying is the rankings would not only represent the aggregate position of the committee members, but they would also reflect the reality of the 3.035 that's available and so on, and that you would not make any number 1 recommendations once the aggregate total of the number 1s that had previously been discussed. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Being a math guy, I like the math of it, but I do. There are 2 concerns. Maybe you can just help me understand how it would work. The ranking process is an attempt to do 2 things. It's an attempt to build an aggregate kind of value, if you will, for the individual application. So if I rank something number 1 and the sheriff ranks it number 3, we blend that out and it becomes a number 2 based on it. So the numbers are, in my mind, are not so much representative of any fiscal element. They're representative of trying to build an aggregate of 7 or 9 people's view. How would you ascertain the order in which they're considered under your plan? Because what order they would be considered potentially would mean whether an application ended up being a number 1 or number 3.
That's a great question, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to approach that. What I kind of started with is if I were to make a rating of 1 through 3, how could I say that I have more priorities? And I'm not suggesting that folks have done this intentionally, but how could I say I have more priority 1s than funding is available? So I would ask that we consider that for each individual voting member, that the number of 1 priorities that are allotted not exceed, and maybe you would want to go higher than 3.1 million, but it be at a certain specified number, so that, quite honestly, each voting member thinks more about how they're assigning that number, how they're assigning that priority. And and also I think that will allow for greater transparency for the public to determine how not entirely, okay, because there's a lot to consider here when making a priority, 1 through 3, but that fiscal part of it is certainly a part of it. We all have priorities in life, in our personal budgets, and priorities that are exceeding our ability to pay for it ourselves, they're not prioritized by definition. By de facto, they're not prioritized. They're put to a side because of the available funds. And so, yeah, your question's taken. I'm not sure necessarily how to approach that, but
Yeah.
let's talk about it.
Yeah, like I said, just trying to think mechanically how this would work. With your system, the order of consideration becomes the most critical element. And just to pick examples out of this packet, if we were to consider the fire chiefs first, and with the caveat that the sheriff's recommendation that they consider applications in total and don't start carving on them, 2.2 million of your 3 is already gone right off the bat. If in fact you considered a bunch of the smaller applications first, they could potentially be fully funded and not leave enough that when you got to the consideration of the fire application, there wasn't enough money available, and by definition under your system, you wouldn't be able to rank it as a number 1. So I'm not offended by the idea. In fact, I kind of see some merit in the idea, but the practicality of it to me is a serious concern, let me put it that way, because what it does now, it takes the order of consideration and makes that the primary factor in all likelihood of whether an application gets funded or not, rather than the relative merit of that application. And I'm trying to, in my mind, real quickly come up with some way to overcome that limitation. So let me be quiet and let other members speak.
I think it's a good point, because I think when we first vote, everyone has different priorities, right? And then by the time you look at the rankings, then you're looking at it and go, wow, does this number 1 really beat that other number 1, right? And so I don't think it's a bad idea to once that first ranking does happen, is to then take, the top 12 or so, and then individually rank 1 through 12 the top applications. And so we all have different priorities for that top 12, and we could then essentially give them a rank 1 through 12, like you're talking about. And then the lowest number gets put at the top, and the highest number gets put at the very bottom, and there's our ranking system. And the top 12 is there. Now, we might be able to only fund the top 3 because fire might be there. And then after that, then it's going to be up to the Board of Supervisors to say, okay, how much do we cut from fire, or what is the next ranking, of our priorities? But if there is, like I said, in that first quarter, that additional $500,000 from the sheriff's office or other savings, then they could get, into that a little bit deeper. So that's just for consideration, but I do agree with you.
Bernie?
Oh, I'm
I'll
sorry.
let her go first, go ahead, but I'll be next.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I just wanted to let you know, as an individual committee member in the several years I've served, I personally, when we do our initial ranking straw votes, my hand does not go up continually as a yes if I know that my yeses exceed what the amount that we are using. So I appreciate your comments, and personally, I already do that. I think it's my fiscal fiduciary responsibility before I'm a firm believer that we must send something to the Board of Supervisors that is not 9 million when we're only looking at 3.1 million.
Ernie?
Yeah, I was concerned about a lot of the applications have room for negotiation on them, like, for instance, Fortuna, the city of Fortuna has made 3 different applications, and they give us the opportunity to say yes, no on each application, where if they made it as one application, maybe we could have said, we like this part of it, but we don't like this part of it. So where does negotiation on their price fit in with this? I mean, if we just look at the face value of the application and say yes, no on it, we're going to be done quickly here, but we're going to leave a we're gonna overfund a lot of people and underfund a lot of others, so I don't know how it fits. Sorry. Thank you, I'm through.
Can I answer that? I think, the next go-around is our chance to ask questions of these applicants. And so as we dive through these applications, the ones that we say yes to, then we dive into it and say, is this really necessary or not? Or, what do you think about it? And because they know they're out there, and several of them talked already about it, and Fortuna's already reduced theirs based upon the whatever $9 million worth of asks. We have 3.1, 3.2 to give out. So, so people have to be, really, really. Go
It's
ahead.
our job as advisory group up here to work this out and try to get the best for the dollar that we can. So I think a lot of these applications have room for negotiation. There's a lot of things in it that we can say, look, we don't need to fund that, but can you get by with this, which seems to routinely happen here anyway. So
I just don't want, my goal from the last, my suggestion was that we don't tell people to carve out 25% of their application. Because as you see, the city of Eureka is very fiduciary. They're very responsible with their money, okay? And so they've done a very, very good job. And so if you cut their application, you're actually cutting positions, and the intent of their application is totally taken out. So they're already bare bones there. But maybe other applications can be less. But that, I think, is going to be up to the individual applicant to pull those out. And that may persuade us, because we know our rankings in our mind of where we want to get to, our own, highest priorities. And so that may persuade us to bump them up, one or two in the priority list, so we can fund more. But I would suggest that they bring that to us as opposed to us imposing a 25% cut or that kind of stuff. But I don't think, Ernie, there's anything wrong with us questioning some of the line like Glenn has done. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's this committee's job, is to look at these applications and to question it. What is the best use of this money? And is this request, does it live up to the merits of the ballot language and what the intent of Measure Z is about?
I wanted to add in a comment. I really appreciate the idea put forth, because as I've come up to these types of these meetings are the only opportunity we really have to discuss how we attack this, what the framework is, and how do we try to provide transparency and clarity. So I would really like the opportunity to, even after this cycle is done, to continue to have meetings to discuss strategic framework and to discuss process beyond just our standard one meeting before the applications come out. Because I think discussion between each other is really critical to us finding the best way to allocate funds. And I wanted to articulate that and put that out there.
Just for everyone's clarity, I've heard a variety of ideas here, and just to make sure I have the sense of the committee, I heard, first of all, just for the point of view of the audience, there are two members here that are alternates that can participate in any discussion, they can forward any idea or anything, but they don't have the capability, unfortunately, having been an alternate myself, to make a motion to actually get the committee to move. So if their idea is powerful enough and they have the power of logic with them and can get a committee member who is not an alternate to make a motion, then we can proceed. So I have not yet seen any committee member take the idea that was presented and craft it into a motion. I guess just to be efficient in the use of time, is anyone currently considering doing that? Okay. So I don't mean to dismiss your idea, but for practical purposes, I think it's on the table at the current time. I did hear some hints, I guess, in the discussion relative to your point that there could be a process where we would go through our initial ranking, and when we end up with, say, 3 applications that have an aggregate score of 13 or whatever it is and are relatively low, I thought I heard a suggestion saying that then we should do a second round where we would take all of those with an equal aggregate rating and rank them number 1 of the 13s, number 2 of the 13s, and number 3. Did I understand that correctly? I thought that was your suggestion.
A little bit different, but I would just propose that we just get through the first phase of this, the yes or no's, and then after that we can discuss, does the process need to change? Because I don't know, maybe we take care of it and we'd only approve 5 applications and we can be done. I don't know. But I would just move that we just get through that next part of the application and then we can discuss the process after that.
Okay. So the suggestion from the sheriff, and I'm just asking if there's a consensus on the committee, is that we do the yes/no discussion today in reference to, do we feel that the application is consistent with the intent of the measure? Then we would come back with our traditional rank structures and see how that arrays itself. And then depending on the array that results from that, we might in fact do secondary or even tertiary rankings to highlight the internal divisions between those that had the same aggregate ranking. Is that everybody's kind of consensus of how we should proceed? To that? Any public comment on this discussion? Come on, don't be bashful, wade in here. The election's over, you can say what you really think now.
Well, some of the agencies that work for the county are responsible for some of the things that are being requested as well. So maybe there would be a way that an agency that works on this, but maybe isn't meeting all the needs, could collaborate somehow, or that some of the idea in the grant is passed on to the people that perhaps are a bit maybe responsible or could be responsible, so that it would share out the expense a little bit. Does anybody understand what I'm saying? No. Okay. I'm trying to be politically correct. So if somebody is charged with taking care of homeless people that have a mental health issue, then there's some county funds that are actually used for some of the people that are being paid to do that. So if a grant is requesting the same thing that the county is already paying a staff member to do, maybe there would be some way that a mediator could come together and say, how can we cut down the grant a little bit but make sure the work is done to help the people on the streets?
Any other public comment?
I have a comment on that.
Rich?
I don't think we can do that because there's a deadline for the applications, and they have to be in by a certain date. And to combine 2 applications, or an application and a different entity, would be a separate application. So we can't do that, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think I think it's too late to combine. I think that a good idea, but it should have happened a month ago. Okay?
Any other public comment? Okay. We will move forward then to the initial consideration, which is, do the committee members feel that an application is consistent with the intent of the measure? Probably if you'd like to just go through them sequentially, and then I can ask for a vote. Or I can go through them sequentially.
And these are a yes or no vote.
This is a vote whether you believe the application is consistent with the intent of the measure and should be further considered. Sure.
Can I just have the ballot measure, the language up there just to review, just so we know? I know we've probably read it a dozen times, we probably recite it, but just.
That's in the package, Bill.
So Sheriff Hansel, the Measure O ballot language was slightly different from the Measure Z ballot language, but the ordinance specifically expresses that it is a renewal of the measure. The only distinction is the sunset date. So just so the committee and the public do not get confused thinking that it has changed the intent. It is the renewal of Measure Z. So I have them both pulled up, but just it's worth mentioning that the Measure Z ballot language specifically referred to drug/illegal marijuana grow house enforcement/prevention. That just for space was not mentioned in the Measure O ballot language, but the Measure O renewed Measure Z. So also, before moving on to the ranking, I am just wanting perhaps Chair Zemer for you to confirm that the committee is prepared because the applications were available. I'm not, I just, it would be good for folks to have had a chance to review them before making that determination.
Okay. So is there anyone who feels that they have not had sufficient time to review the applications and make the determination of consistency, either because you just saw them or have simply not had the time to make that sort of determination? Is there anyone that would like to defer that process to the next meeting? Okay, Ernie? Okay.
I would like to defer it because I misunderstood went through whether I wanted to keep this application or not, instead of whether it met the Measure Z criteria.
Important difference, certainly, yeah.
So I was, my fault, I apologize, I should have studied harder.
No, certainly not. All right. On the basis of that piece of information, I think the only honest thing to do at this point is to defer that discussion till, for the initial item. You're looking for a motion?
Would someone have a motion to, you know, it is on the agenda.
Okay, because it's agendized, we'd have to move to defer it. Okay.
I make a motion.
So Ernie's motion is to defer the consideration of compliance until the next meeting next week. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion? Public comment? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of deferring the consideration of consistency to be the initial item on next week's agenda, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we will defer the discussion of consistency as an initial item of the next agenda. Any other items the staff would like to bring forward?
I guess just a follow-up to that motion that was just passed, and you all know this, but we've got a lot of work ahead of us next week. So, so I hope that that you have the materials you need. If you need any more information or need staff to reach out to applicants to get information or make sure they attend the next meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out because we are happy to facilitate that.
Yeah. Just as a reminder and echoing what she said, it's customary and appropriate to channel those sorts of requests through the staff as opposed to making them directly to the applicant, even though it seems more efficient at times to contact them directly, because Brown Act and a bunch of other considerations suggest that that information has to be shared equally. So make those requests through the staff if you have them. If no further business, we'll call the meeting adjourned until next Thursday at 2 p.m.
I would like to make one final comment with regards to the ballot language.
What?
With regards to the ballot language. I asked them to include the full measure because I wanted more clarity than the ballot language provided. And because of the importance of commas and punctuation and how it is grouped, I felt it was really hard to get an understanding of what the measure's intent was simply from that. And so I would really like the committee members to refer to the ordinance rather than simply just the ballot language when considering applications.
And you're referring now to the Measure O ordinance or the Measure Z ordinance, because they are in fact different.
I'm referring to the ordinance supplied to me by the staff.
And as I
We are
stated,
technically still tell me about the effective dates. Are we still technically in Measure Z, or are we moved into the Measure O time period?
the ordinance for Measure O the language said there are no changes except the removal of the sunset date. So the information that was included in your packet today and that ordinance
Okay.
is the
Consistent.
ordinance. Yes, that's consistent, so.
Okay.
That's
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for your attendance and time.
I got a real shitty question.